I was supposed to be in the hospital for one more night. That's what the doctor said when they wheeled me out of surgery. One more day of rest, then you'll be home. But that morning, the doctor smiled and told me I was recovering better than expected. You're strong, he said, we'll discharge you today. At the time, I thought it was a blessing. I thought I'd be surprising my husband, Daniel, by showing up a day early, walking back into our home where he'd probably be preparing something sweet for my return. I imagined his relief, his joy. I imagined the warm embrace of someone who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health. But life had other plans for me, and what I walked into was not the homecoming I had pictured. It was a betrayal that shattered the very ground beneath my feet. The cab dropped me off in front of our house. I was tired but hopeful, clutching the small hospital bag and smiling at the thought of curling up on my own couch. When I pushed open the front door, I immediately noticed something was wrong. The house wasn't quiet the way it usually was. I could hear laughter, soft, intimate, the kind of laughter that comes from secrets shared between two people who think the world belongs to them. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob, my heart pounding in a way the hospital machines never picked up. I stepped inside quietly, telling myself it could be the TV. Maybe a neighbor visiting. But then I saw them. There they were, in my living room, on my couch, the very couch Daniel and I had picked together when we first moved in. My husband, the man who had kissed my forehead just days ago in the hospital and promised to take care of me, was holding another woman in his arms. Their lips met as if no one else existed in the world. She was beautiful, younger, with long flowing hair, her head tilted back as if she belonged there more than I ever did. My breath caught in my chest, and for a second, I felt like the world had stopped. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Instead, tears welled up in my eyes as my body trembled with disbelief and rage. Daniel turned and saw me. The color drained from his face instantly. His arms fell away from her, and he shot to his feet as if he'd been burned. Emily, you're home. He stammered, his voice shaking. The woman beside him, bold and unashamed, just smirked as if I were an intruder in my own house. I felt my knees weaken, but I refused to collapse. I held my ground even though every part of me was breaking. I was released a day early, I said, my voice low but sharp, each word cutting through the silence. And I came home to a celebration. Daniel rushed toward me, reaching out like he could erase what I had seen, but I stepped back. Don't you dare touch me, I hissed. My hospital bag slipped from my hand and thudded to the floor, the sound echoing in the tense room. The woman, his lover, stood up, flipping her hair, and looked me dead in the eye. You weren't supposed to be back yet, she said coldly, as if I were the one ruining her evening. My stomach turned. This wasn't just a fling. She was comfortable here, too comfortable. How long had this been going on? How many times had she sat on my couch, drunk from my glasses, walked across my floors? Daniel started to panic, words tumbling out of his mouth, apologies, excuses, promises, but they sounded hollow. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I was lonely while you were in the hospital. I love you, Emily. His words stabbed deeper than silence ever could. How could he use my pain, my vulnerability, as an excuse to betray me? I broke down then, the tears spilling down my cheeks, but not out of weakness, out of release. I had spent years building a life with this man, sacrificing, loving, forgiving. And in return, he couldn't even stay faithful while I lay in a hospital bed fighting to recover. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized this wasn't love anymore. This was betrayal wearing the mask of familiarity. Pack your things, I said, my voice steady now, my tears drying as anger took their place. You don't live here anymore. Daniel's face twisted with shock. He tried to argue, to beg, but I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to allow myself to be humiliated further. I turned to his lover and added, and you, get out of my house before I forget I'm still healing. She scoffed but grabbed her purse and walked out, tossing a cruel smile over her shoulder as if she had won. But little did she know, she had freed me. The days that followed weren't easy. There were moments when the silence in the house felt unbearable, when I questioned if I had done the right thing, when memories of happier times haunted me. But slowly, I began to see the truth. Walking away wasn't weakness, it was strength. Choosing myself over betrayal was the bravest thing I could do. I surrounded myself with friends who cared, family who reminded me of my worth, and I poured my pain into rebuilding my life. I went back to work, started taking long walks, and rediscovered hobbies I had abandoned for the sake of keeping Daniel's world spinning. And little by little, the cracks in my heart began to heal. Months later, Daniel tried to come back. He showed up at my door, flowers in hand, eyes red with regret. But by then, I wasn't the same woman who had left the hospital with hope only to find heartbreak. I was stronger, clearer, and no longer willing to be a backup plan for someone who didn't know my value. I looked at him and said the words that sealed my freedom: "You lost me the moment you chose her." Then I closed the door, and with it, that chapter of my life. My story is not just about betrayal. It's about rediscovery. About realizing that sometimes life has to shatter us so we can rebuild ourselves stronger than before. I thought I'd never survive the sight of my husband with his lover, but I did more than survive, I thrived. And if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever felt like your world ended, let me tell you this: the end of what broke you is also the beginning of what will heal you.